Module 5 is called Learning to Let Go. And this could possibly be one of the most foreign and difficult aspects of this entire thing. Learning to let go. What are we letting go of? We are letting go of the idea of fear, of attachment to things. And we focus on impermanence. Because the thing is that everything is always changing. Everything. Right now, as we speak, I'm getting older, you're getting older. This chair is getting older. And everything is constantly changing. As I'm sitting here talking to you, I am literally inside my body. Some cells are dying, some are replicating. They're doing their own thing inside of there. So literally, constantly, everything in this world is changing. And yet, one of the biggest things that we get stuck on with anxiety is this uncertainty, this anxiety that surrounds this idea that things won't be the same, that things could change at any moment. And most of anxiety comes from this uncertainty. So, for example, even if it's health anxiety, the anxiety comes from not knowing. Maybe something is wrong with me. Maybe something's not wrong with me. But there's anxiety in there. If somebody is, if somebody's late coming home and you're worried about where they are, that comes from the uncertainty of not knowing where they are. And it allows that space for your mind to create all of these different scenarios. And so one of the biggest things that we need to tackle, and this is module 5, and it's a huge one, is how do we become okay with the idea that everything is always changing? Okay. And so, literally everything is always changing. There's uncertainty in everything. I could go to the grocery store right now and I would want to pick up a particular type of olives, and when I get there, they don't have them on the shelves. Well, now what do I do? Literally nothing is certain. The only thing that we really have control over is ourselves. How we respond, how we react, how we speak, how we behave, the things we do. We are the only thing that we can actually control. And when we have anxiety, sometimes it feels like we can't even control that. So this is why being able to let go of these things and start to become comfortable with uncertainty is such an important aspect of alleviating the symptoms of anxiety. Okay. And so there was this, there's actually a saying in Buddhism, and it says, attachment is the root of all suffering. And so this attachment to ideas, expectations, attachment to the idea that we want to control things, that we want to be able to know how things are going to go. All of these different forms of attachment lead to us suffering. And for those of us with anxiety, this becomes amplified hugely. Okay. And so Eckhart Tolle, he was the author of The Power of Now. And this is a book that if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you read it. I think I've read it about 10 times. Every time I get something new out of it. So absolutely, if you haven't read it, and the first time you read it, if none of it makes sense, just read it. Let it sink in for a month or so and then read it again. Because that's sort of what I did. And every time I read it, I highlighted a different part. And it's something that sort of just integrates slowly over time, as is a lot of information that we receive. But one of the quotes that he says that really I try to live by and I try to remember every day is that there will be situations in our life that we perceive as negative. And if you can change them and make them better, then go change them. But if they are out of your control and you cannot change them, then you must learn to accept that present moment, accept that situation as if you had chosen it. Otherwise, we continue to suffer within our mind, and we continue to worry and build all of these different things going on in our minds, which causes anxiety. And, it's kind of funny because I used to be like the worst about wanting everything to be the same all the time, needing this need for control. And it started when I was a kid. Like, I wanted everything to be the same all the time. I was about 4 years old, and I was telling my dad, like, when he came home, that he didn't put his shoes in the right spot. He needed to do this. He needed, and I would see a little speck of dirt on my carpet, and I would go get my mom and say, he was vacuuming this. Like, everything had a place. Everything had to be exactly the way that it needed to be in my mind. And it was actually so intense that when we moved houses, I was just so upset. And so the only way that my mother could get me to calm down was to decorate my room exactly the same as it was in the other house, which was yellow walls with blue trim. And I don't know, it was this little teddy bear room that I needed it to be exactly the same. And she actually wrote a book for me called Tessie's New Home. And it was this little book that she wrote that was illustrated, but it was about how Tessie was scared of change. She didn't want change. She wanted everything to be the same as it always was because that was comfortable. And through the story, she moves houses, she meets new friends, and actually she realizes, I think the last line is, and in the end, Tessie realized that change wasn't so bad after all. And so this is a very basic form, and I love that book because I think it really did help me on my journey towards realizing that some things you just need to let go of. And this is incredibly difficult, right? We have grief. We lose things in our life that we were very attached to, that were part of our everyday life. Things change. You lose jobs. People come and go. There's all sorts of things in our life that we have absolutely zero control over. And so Module 5 is really about doing different exercises, meditations, all sorts of different activities that help us become more aware of this idea of impermanence and flipping that script, because impermanence also means that these negative feelings that we have, these feelings of anxiety, they also are not permanent. So learning to take something that is the basis of anxiety, this idea that nothing is permanent, everything is always changing, nothing is certain, and flipping that, and how do we flip that so that we can now use this to our benefit. And this is, I think I say this every time, this is one of my favorite modules. I think they all go so well together, and I just love seeing the outcomes from everybody in each one of these modules, and the transformations that can take place when something that has held you in this space of fear, when you allow that space to let that go as well, what does that mean for you? So that is Module 5, and I would love to give you some tips right now to allow you to start to experience this. But this is a pretty intense one, because letting go and things like grief and just the entire idea of impermanence can be very, very frightening to a lot of people. And this is actually, as I said, one of the main causes of anxiety. So what I would recommend right now is really just let this sink in, the idea that impermanence and uncertainty is something that causes anxiety, but that we also have the ability to use this uncertainty, this impermanence, that nothing ever stays exactly the same, as a way to help us get out of our anxiety and to alleviate the symptoms and begin to heal. So that is learning to let go. That is Module 5. And I look forward to seeing you in the intro to Module 6 in just a moment. I'll see you there.